Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at the idea of personal responsibility. But we're going to be focusing on capitalist societies.
Mhm.
And we're using this podcast episode called Hops Design as our guide.
Interesting.
And it asks a really interesting question. How can we remain unaffected by others when we're inherently social beings?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So the podcast episode starts off talking about the pandemic
Uh-huh.
and how there was this rise in individualistic mindsets
Yeah.
during the pandemic. And people were hesitant to think about the collective good. Like everyone was kind of just funding for themselves.
Right. It was kind of like every man for himself
Yeah.
during that time. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because the source connects this to capitalism. And they argue that capitalism, with its emphasis on personal success and individual achievement, might actually be fueling this me-first mentality.
So you're saying that capitalism promotes selfishness.
In a way.
Okay.
Yeah, I can. Because when you think about it, capitalism thrives on competition and individual drive. And you're constantly being told to work harder, be better, get ahead. And often that's at the expense of others.
Yeah.
And the podcast suggests that this constant pressure to succeed as an individual can make us lose sight of the bigger picture, which
Yeah.
is our interconnectedness and responsibility to each other.
So they also talk about urban psychology
Yes.
and how that plays a role in this self-centeredness.
Mhm.
What do they have to say about that?
Well, they use this concept called the law of reflection. And basically, imagine looking in the mirror.
Okay.
You see a reflection of yourself.
Right.
Well, they're saying that the law of reflection suggests that our consciousness, our sense of self, is like a reflection of the social world around us.
Okay.
So living in a fast-paced, crowded, often isolating urban environment can really shape our mindset to be more inward focused.
So it's like the city kind of forces you to be more self-centered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they get into how even some approaches to psychology reinforce this individualistic perspective.
Like all those self-help books. They tell you to like visualize your best life
Exactly.
and like manifest a yacht and all your problems will be solved.
Uh-huh. Yeah, those ones. And while those books can be motivating to some extent, this hyper-focus on individual change as if we exist in a vacuum is a little problematic because it kind of ignores the fact that we are products of our environment,
So it's not enough to just work on ourselves.
It's not.
Okay.
We need to be considering the context and the bigger picture.
So then they talk about the need for systemic change.
Yes.
What are they getting at there?
Well, they're arguing that we can't really fully unlock human potential if the systems that we operate in, like capitalism, are constantly pushing us towards self-interest and competition.
So do we all need to just move to a commune and like start growing our own vegetables?
No, not necessarily. But they are calling for a shift in perspective. They suggest we need to move beyond this idea of individual responsibility as the sole answer to all our problems. And we need to start thinking about how to create systems that foster cooperation, empathy, and a sense of shared responsibility.
It takes a village.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a big question. If our personalities are truly shaped by the society we live in, what responsibility do we have to create a society that fosters the best in us?
That's a tough one. So it seems like capitalism,
Yeah.
with this whole idea of, individual success,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of pushing us towards being too individualistic.
Yeah, and even some approaches in psychology inadvertently promote this overly individualistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to think about, if we are products of our environment, what can we do to build an environment that encourages us to be our best, most connected selves?
Yeah, this has been a very interesting deep dive. I hope this sparks some new ideas for you. Thanks for joining us. Catch you next time.